Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gopalan Nair. I was an opposition politician and lawyer in Singapore. As a result of the persecution I suffered by the Singapore government, I moved to California, USA, and obtained asylum. I have been practicing law in California now for more than 20 years. I have had an excellent life since I came here. As you can see from my face, I'm a happy man. I have an excellent law practice and have been enjoying the freedoms in America, something that I could never have had in Singapore under this Singapore government dictatorship. I call it a dictatorship because Singaporeans don't have any freedom. And if you make a little bit of research into this, you will realize that despite the claims of Singapore government and what is put out in the international media, Singapore is hardly a democracy. It's a dictatorship. I want to call this this video today as the fight between siblings, and the Prime Minister of Singapore, the end of a dictatorship. As if you have been following Singapore affairs, you will know the dispute that's going on between the Singapore Prime Minister's siblings and him over the house left by their late father, Lee Kuan Yew. As a lawyer with over 30 years of experience and presently in active law practice in San Francisco, California, Bay Area, let me tell you that the Prime Minister of Singapore, who is the son of the late Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, is clearly abusing the intentions of the late Lee Kuan Yew over the will that Mr. Lee Kuan Yew wrote in relation to his house. The dispute revolves around the house left by the late Lee Kuan Yew. What am I about to tell you on the law does not need someone who has 30 years of law experience. Even a first-year law student can tell you that the late Lee Kuan Yew left a will, and in the will he stated that upon his death his house should not be preserved. He wanted it to be demolished. The trustees of the will were not the Prime Minister but his two siblings. The law requires that the will be admitted to probate, and the court has to give effect to the true intentions in the will, the true intentions of the testator. Therefore, absent unsound mind, coercion, undue influence, or duress, the house is transferred to the trustees, who then give effect to the intentions of the testator. In this case, the house should have been transferred to the trustees, who are the siblings of the Prime Minister, so that he can carry out the intentions of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew in the will, and so that they can demolish the house. And then the house has the personal belongings of Lee Kuan Yew. Those things are similarly transferred to the ownership of the trustees, who then decide what to do with it. The law also states that anyone, including the present Prime Minister, has a right to dispute the will in the probate hearing in the court, and the court will decide whether to uphold it or to reject any objections. In this case, Lee Kuan Yew's will went through probate in a Singapore court, and the court upheld the terms of the will. The court upheld the terms of the late stated by the late Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. The present Prime Minister filed no objections in court, as he was entitled to do. He never disputed the terms of the will. Instead of giving effect to the terms of the will, the Prime Minister of Singapore, by abusing his authority now, refuses to demolish the house. What is more, instead of allowing his siblings as trustees of the will, has taken over possession of the contents of the house and refuses the right of his siblings to the property. Recently, the siblings, the Prime Minister's the Prime Minister's brother and sister, who have been denied their right to give effect to their late father's will, have taken to social media, Facebook, to make public their grievances and the illegal actions of the Prime Minister of Singapore, to deny the right of the late Lee Kuan Yew's last wishes. In the face of the public outcry against this abuse of the law by the Singapore Prime Minister, he has now said that he will hold a public debate in Parliament of Singapore to decide what to do with the house. Let me remind the Prime Minister of Singapore that Parliament has no part to play in this case. The authority to decide what to do with the house rests with the probate court of Singapore, not Parliament. Although every Singaporean knows that the Prime Minister of Singapore is corrupt and is able to do anything he wants with impunity, no one in Singapore would dare question his actions, because he uses his corrupt judiciary and the corrupt legal system to silence and punish anyone who complains. This is why he has been able to do anything he wants, just as his father, Lee Kuan Yew, for 50 years. Finally, we have to thank his two siblings for their exposing to the world the injustice and the dictatorship that exists in Singapore. There is no rule of law, and every single judge in Singapore is merely a stooge to do whatever the Prime Minister wants. Singapore judges use the law to silence dissent. Any open complaint against the Prime Minister and his ministers would result in a defamation action against you in court, and you would be either jailed or bankrupted. There is no freedom of the press, as all newspapers are state-controlled, as they are in North Korea. The people of Singapore have no human rights, no freedom of speech or expression or assembly, all of which would result in your arrest and imprisonment. This is why the siblings took to social media and Facebook to publicize their grievances, as the local newspapers, which are controlled by the government, will not publish their side of the story. Thanks to the siblings, the credibility of the Prime Minister of Singapore is completely destroyed. Now Singaporeans can publicly call their Prime Minister, his wife, and his government corrupt, and it would be difficult for him to sue them now, since the cat is out of the bag for all to see. The best thing for the Prime Minister and his wife to do now is to step down and leave, because now no one in the island of Singapore has any respect for him. In the past, he would justify his court actions against critics by claiming that he is trying to protect his reputation. Now, since he has no longer any reputation, it would be hard-pressed for him to sue anyone who criticizes him. I see the end of the Prime Ministership of Lee Hsien Loong of Singapore and his government. They have no longer any credibility left. They are seen as corrupt politicians who abuse the legal system for their own purposes. Singaporeans who yearn for democracy should take this opportunity to publicly show their displeasure against the Prime Minister and his dictatorship. They should publicly protest on the streets, demanding that he should go and that democracy should be restored in Singapore. They should demand their freedom now. I am able to make this video from my location in the San Francisco, California Bay Area. The Singapore Prime Minister has no means to sue me here in California, as I have the protection of American rule of law. Had I been in Singapore now, my life and liberty would be in danger, as the Singapore Prime Minister, a dictator, would be able to find means at his disposal to punish me. My message to Singaporeans is this: you don't have to live a life such as this in bondage. Your Prime Minister has lost all credibility, and no matter what he says now will not be believed. He is weak and unworthy of rule. He should be removed. This is your opportunity now. Stand up to him. Thank you.